If you are a poet or an artist and you're interested in taking your creative forms into business ventures, you may be wondering, how do I even find clients? Who's going to pay for this? You know what I mean? So we're going to talk about
Yeah.
our own experiences in turning creative endeavors also into business opportunities. And this video podcast. Welcome to Arts and Offers. We talk all about trying to help poets trying to achieve creative and financial independence. To guide you in this process, there is me. Hello, guys. My name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
How are you today?
I am doing good. I'm doing pretty good.
You
I
got a new
woke up.
toy.
I do. So this is really exciting times. And actually, you know what? One of the things that we talked about, this was pretty early on in the podcast. We talked about investing in your craft and what it means to what it looks like to invest in whatever whatever art craft that you're looking to pursue. Especially if you're okay, I want to make money or I want there to be something built on top of this. And so, which is all just to say that I made I made the largest investment that I've ever made monetarily at one time towards any one of the crafts or the things that I do. In a new camera. I don't want to talk about it yet, the camera itself quite yet, but
Okay.
just know that there's an I think that one of the things that I was thinking about before I made the investment was okay, so whatever I spend this money on, I want it to be something that a year from now there could be something coming from it still. Right, so a lot of times you're thinking about stocks, or you're thinking about investing in things, and these are things that you should also. I'm not saying not to think about it, but on the other hand, it was what about yourself? I am a stock. I am an asset that I am investing in. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that whatever value that I have to the market right now increases over time. And one of those things that I can do is, invest in an instrument that's going to allow me to further that craft. And so that's thing A. And then B, if any real true investment, and I think that we talked about this a little bit, but also I was talking to who was I talking to? One of Ajane's friends, Miana, because shout out to Shukra, she invented a comb. It's really cool. But one of the things that I was even talking to her is the investment is it's not supposed to feel comfortable. A lot of times people make just enough of an investment in themselves to be but I'm not. It's not scary territory. You know what I mean? They're not doing something that's making them feel uncomfortable. But if you really take a leap, even when we were talking about last time, being okay, renting this room,
Right.
It's not it's not nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's not okay, $25. That I guess I gotta spend it. No, you're actually thinking to yourself, okay, what is the thing that I'm gonna be able to do? Well, what is the thing that is going to make a lasting impression and really be able to create some opportunities for me? And this was the next step, and I just feel that's the same thing when it comes to really anything that you're doing to invest in yourself, which is make the decision that's it's gonna be uncomfortable. It actually should be uncomfortable, because if it's a true investment, if it's something that's gonna really make an impact, it's not gonna be something that's just small and that you can kind of get away with. There's gonna be things. There's gonna be some instances where you really gotta take that leap of faith.
Yeah. And it's the idea of you look at levels of income. It's something that Myron Golden talks about a bit, is that a lot of times when we think about money, we think about spending it and covering bills and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at people who financially are wealthier, a lot of times the question is, how is the money I put into whatever it is now going to recoup the same amount, double, triple, using money as a tool to bring in more income.
Yeah.
As versus something that just kind of goes out the window. Buying a car, you lose money on the car immediately. But for instance, if you buy a camera, I mean, that was kind of like when I got that camera. It was a very similar kind of feeling. It's like that moment where like you're hovering over like the buy button and
Yeah.
it's like, but that's since then it all the things you're able to create bring back way more than what you spent, and that's something I think when we get into our central topic today about clients is that we need to
Yeah.
remember is that people don't buy something if the dollar amount is the same as the value. The
Right.
value they get is always going to have to be higher than the
Yeah.
dollar amount that they spend.
Yeah, like there, and it should, because it should kind of fluctuate both ways. 'Cause I'm like, for it's like the perception of it on each side. Like, if I am producing a some like doing like a cooking segment or something like that. If I'm producing a cooking segment, it's like the reasons that I am suited for that job is because I already have the setup and the equipment and the software and the know-how to get this done with minimal effort, right? And so to me, producing that is not necessarily, I'm not like it would be a lot more stressful if I had never handled a camera before, if
Right.
this was my first camera and I just got it last week and then somebody asked me to do this, it would be a much more stressful, much longer endeavor than anybody really needs,
Yeah.
right? But because of all the information that I have, it's a much like quicker endeavor. But to them, it's like again, so to your client, and we'll talk about this in a second, but I naturally like to your client, that perception is like they're looking at it like, wow, I could never do this by myself. And like I really want I really want that. And then to you, you're like, I can't make money.
Right.
I will at least the IRS won't allow me to make it anymore. They said, strike, fool me once, shame on me. Then fool me twice, 50 years in prison. So I just stopped the printing presses on all of that, and I'm just making it the legal way now. So there it
I'm
is.
sorry.
Yeah, well,
It's a shame when we have to.
yeah, things we got to do.
Let's talk more about the legal way. Trying to take our art to these sorts of levels where it's about impacting. And I think so. I think when we're thinking about art from a business lens, think about poetry from a business lens. The very first thing is we need to be thinking about. I get that idea of what I'm creating, giving value to others.
Yeah.
So that's the very first thing we need to keep in mind. And with that in mind, something we really be considering as we start thinking about the offer that we want to design and create is we want to be thinking about the person we are serving. And the person you are serving doesn't care about features. They don't care about necessarily how they get the thing. They care about the thing. And so we're trying to really concentrate on the actual offer itself that we're going to be giving to the person that turns to us, because sometimes we get really hung up like, oh, I'm going to add this, they're going to love this, I'll give them this feature, I'll give them this feature, when in reality it's just like, look, I want to, like, if we think about like the gym and like health and things like that, like people are like, look, I want this six pack, or I want to be able to run the marathon. I don't care about necessarily the diet plan you're going to give me. I don't necessarily care about the workout regimen. I want the results. And then once I, purchase or subscribe or sign up for whatever the offer is, that's when like you give me the features. But when I'm actually thinking about the actual decision to buy, I'm thinking about the result, which means that when we're thinking about what we create, we need to be thinking about what's kind of like the future desired state of the person we're serving, like what's the end goal, and then we can kind of reverse engineer from there.
Yeah, you also see that. I mean, there's that kind of messaging kind of all over the place. I even think about like auto repair shops. Like even like most auto repair shops, unless they have a specialty, it looks like they're strictly mufflers or something like that. Most auto repair shops, their taglines are really simple. Like, "We'll fix your car." They're not saying like we're gonna replace your gasket. They're not gonna give you all the specifics, because a lot of times if your car is really in disrepair, like you might be bringing your car up and you have no idea what's wrong with it, and they're like, you're trusting or you're hoping that the person that is you're communicating with is going to be able to, naturally fix your car. So like, yeah, especially, as entrepreneurs, a lot of times because you have all that information, you kind of want to like vomit out all that information. Like, this is all the
Right.
things that I'm going to do for you, all the things. But I'm like, what is the thing that they're asking for? If the thing that they're asking for is, like I said, I mean, let's say it's like for poetry. The thing they're asking for is like, can you do a poetry for Black History Month talking about, happy about freedom? And then you're like, yeah, I can give this poem. And then you want to talk like about all the references that you use for your poem and all your favorite artists and all that. A lot of times, sometimes they might be interested in that. I don't know. In my experience, they're like, yeah, we're, we want to book you. Let's go ahead and get things wrapped up. So, yeah, you don't got to give everybody everything. Just give them
Yeah.
enough to let them know that you can do the
Yeah.
job.
I mean, this is something I know I've run into just, from teaching and things like that, is from the person that's creating the offer side, you can get really hung up on the features. Like, oh, don't want this, so let me add it. And then when I make like the website or when I make the flyer or whatever I'm telling people about it, I go real heavy on the features I'm adding instead of going heavy on this is what you're going to become, this is what you want, this is what you're going to get, in terms of the actual outcome. And we really need to kind of, there's this idea when you're actually talking with a client, spending as much time as possible talking about that, again, desired state.
Yeah.
The longer you can linger in that area, the more clarity it's going to give you in terms of the offer you create for them, but it's also going to help them envision it as well, and they'll be there. I mean, I think I was working with some of my pronunciation students this morning, and we were talking a lot about goals, and one of the issues that all of them had with their goals was everything's very cerebral and you can't visualize it. They're like, oh, I want to be a better communicator. What does that look like? What does it mean to be a better communicator? Like, what does that mean? Like, the more concrete we can be, the more we can visualize it, the more we can be there. And I think that's our job, is to help our clients, our future clients, people we're going to work with in the future, to actually visualize themselves in that position that they want to be in.
100%. When they can understand how what you are doing is going to help them actually in the world, as opposed to just like theoretically, in their being, then like it's going to help them a lot. It's going to help them a lot more. Like, even when you think about like a driving instructor, if a driving instructor is like, I'm just going to help you drive better, like that's like good. But if they're like, I'm going to help you work on like your left turns, because it was just like, maybe you have like I don't know, hand-eye coordination is really poor on left turns, then like that kind of specialty or that kind of like assistance, if you're able to make them see like, okay, this is where I can really assist you, then a lot of times that'll kind of pull them back over the center into the sale.
So something that I think, or that I hope will be helpful for people watching this, is kind of reflecting on our own offers that we've created for people that connect with art. I'll go first, just kind of give a model, and maybe you could talk a little about like photography stuff, and like poetry videos and things. So my main business, again, is teaching. I'm a pronunciation coach, and I would say within the last like year and a half, I've really been kind of asking myself, how can I create this link between poetry, which I think is a really powerful tool for communication, and pronunciation, which I think is another really powerful tool for communication. Because there was a long time where I kind of separated them, and then I was like, there are ways that they can each really benefit each other. And in fact, that's one of the things, side note, that we had a poetry retreat a couple weeks ago, and part of the retreat was talking about performance, not like necessarily like, being like a slam performer, but actually just talking about delivery. Like, how do you become a more effective communicator from a stage? And a lot of that comes from things I've learned just from teaching pronunciation and things that we're looking for in American English. So I think that this speaks to a really central idea that we want to have as we approach poetry from a business perspective as well, or art from a business perspective as well, is figure out who is the actual person we're helping. Because if we're just like, I don't know who needs to be helped with poetry, well, if you don't know, then they don't know. But I was like, okay, I have these pronunciation students who are learning American English, and there's this tool, which is poetry in American English. What if we used poetry inside of our actual classes to study aspects of pronunciation, to study stress patterns, to study pitch patterns, to study elements of contrast, everything we need to be effective communicators. And so I created basically, among other things, one of the things I created was a workshop. So an hour and a half workshop where I basically said, hey, we're going to use a text, which was poems, and I've done this multiple times. We're going to use a poem as our central resource, and we're going to practice aspects of American English pronunciation using this poem. Would you be interested in that? And I targeted already my pronunciation students, and they're interested in pronunciation. They hadn't done it, use poetry. A lot of them hadn't had exposure to poetry before. They're willing to try something new. And the people that weren't didn't sign up. And that's okay, because we want to also have something that's relatively narrow. Okay, so it's a relatively niche thing. It's poetry, but then it's also poetry for pronunciation. You find that people are drawn to that, that they can't get elsewhere because no one else is doing this. It's a unique offer. And so they're able to come to the workshop and things like that. So that's how I was able to create one example of an offer related to poetry, where I already had this group of people in mind, and I had this idea of poetry, and you link it together. It goes with the concept we mentioned before, where I think that's going to be really key for us as we think about poetry in business, is you want to think about my poetry and something. So in this case, it was like poetry and pronunciation. So now it's people with those kind of dual focuses that we can kind of bring together. Because if it's just poetry, you might be like, well, it's going to be a hard sell because it's not really selling to anyone. Whereas it's like, oh, poetry and pronunciation, now I can target a very specific group of people.
Do you feel like kind of, because you're using kind of your already embedded audience to even more narrowly focus within that audience, like to something more specific, do you feel like that helps you to be able to expand outside of where your audience is currently, to be like, well, these are the people even within my audience that, or within my like audience and like even students that would be interested, so finding people that are like even this more narrow pathway?
So I think it's really beneficial because, one, it gives me an opportunity to even talk like this. So for instance, right now I'm talking to poets who probably aren't language learners, right? But now they're being like, oh, well, but I'm also interested in communication and delivery, right? So so it is expanding it. So I'm able to take tools from pronunciation, expand it to a whole different audience, a poet audience, right? And then another thing too, we haven't talked a ton about like personal branding, but I think a big thing is we want to be able to show up in the world as our selves.
Right.
And before I was creating these workshops, I was not showing up as a teacher as my full self because my students didn't know I was doing poetry stuff. Right. And in the poetry community, I also wasn't showing up as my full self because I wasn't tapping into all the things I knew about language learning and teaching and communication strategies. So now I feel I'm able to, it's not that I was intentionally hiding things before, but now I'm able to be
integrated.
Like I'm more myself now than I was previously. And I think that that's something that I know artists often have a negative view on business. I get it. But I think business actually allows you to become more of yourself if you're open to it. Because I'm able to do much more of the components of myself now than I was when I kept things separate.
Yeah. And I think about that too, because like, so something, I had a kind of a similar experience. I would do like photo shoots for like businesses. And but I also did videography, but I would do videography for like short films and stuff like that. And I think one day I was doing a shoot for a local gallery here, 83 Gallery. And when I was like just like shooting some of the artwork and the hanging and things like that, and like kind of in the middle of it, I was just like, yeah, like there should be commercial, like there should be a commercial for 83 Gallery. But honestly, like because like we're also thinking about like doing like some video content for events coming up. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is just like, but this gallery is always open. Like we're like, whenever the opportunity arises for an event, we want to do something. But I'm like, you should just have something that's consistently going, saying, come to 83 Gallery and stuff like that. And I talked to the other, operator of the gallery. His name is Jeff, too. So not this Jeff, the other Jeff. But I was talking to him. We ended up making a commercial for 83 Gallery, and then we made another commercial for another event, and then we just continue to kind of make commercial content for it. But that allowed me to be in a space where I'm like, okay, well, this isn't like a short film, you know what I mean? But this is something that I can add onto the package. And then it's also kind of incorporating, you know, where I'm coming from when it comes to like poetry and just writing in general. Because then I'm able to offer that as a package now. I'm able to say like, hey, book me to, you know, photograph this event or photograph like your location, but then let's do a short commercial, quick 30-second spot that you can put onto your Instagram or your, you know, wherever you want to, you know, place, like your Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and then that way you have actual commercial content. But then on top of that, I'm also writing these commercials, right? So it's essentially, it starts with like a small consultation. I come in and look at the place, and I said like, we'll pick a shoot day. If you can section out 2 hours out of this day, we can get pretty much, and that 2 hours is typically just for that way they are able to have enough time to get the lines down and stuff like that. They don't necessarily have to memorize them, but you just have to be able to say them naturally, so that way they have like a good amount of takes. That way we can kind of cut them together. But yeah, kind of like your experience. Like I think I never really thought to put them together into the same space and be like, okay, I can do all of the things that I am at once. But then it's like, if you are, you know, like let's say for example like ADR or like if you want to do like a voiceover for like a commercial, right? When I'm thinking about like doing like a voiceover for a commercial, I'm thinking I can do the voiceover because I do voiceover work. But also at the same time, I'm thinking my videographer side is thinking I need to book a voiceover person. And so immediately, if I just integrate, I save myself $200, you know, from the budget, so I can be like, oh, I'll do that and I'll do that. Mm-hmm. And then also for the photo shoots, I'll also do that. I got like a secondary camera we can do for the shoot while you're doing the recording. So it's like I'm able to integrate everything, because like now as an entrepreneur, you're like, I have to use all the tools that I have at my disposal before I start trying to outsource things to kind of bring them in. And a lot of times, even if you don't know something right now, that integration will encourage you, or at least it has encouraged me to learn things that I don't necessarily know. That way I'm like, I'll never be in a position where I don't have this asset again.
Mm-hmm. So I think it also makes you feel better, because you feel like you're tapping into more of yourself.
Yeah, being your, I think, okay, so this actually happened to me when I was like working at my old job. Like while I was working at my old job, they had booked me to do voiceover work for a commercial. And then when they booked me to do the voiceover work for the commercial, I was like, actually, this is pretty cool. Like I actually like that. But the thing what was happening, and the reason why I was picked to do the voiceover work, was because, like, you know, either both over the phone or during presentations, like at work, I have a performance acumen that's going to be a little bit higher than you're like most people on an average, just because like most people aren't performing poems like all the time.
Right.
And so and it was just to say that I'm able to do a couple things, and I have like different voices and different like impressions that I can do. So I'm a little bit versatile, but it's also like the voices and impressions was also a way of integrating something that I just thought was funny that I would do just because. And I was able to find a way to integrate that into my poems. So the more that you're able to kind of collapse these pieces of yourself into the same self, and then that way, no matter where you are, you're like, I can use this in this aspect. Yeah, it is Liberating is not quite the right word, but
I find it fulfilling.
Fulfilling. Yeah. It's makes it. It's a wholesome. It's like, oh man, like I am me. I am the same person that does that over here.
So I think I want to make sure people have some actionable stuff. So we've given some
yeah.
examples. So in we're kind of just like free riffing, but I'll say the first thing is if you're a poet that's like, all right, I want to create an offer. That's great that you guys have created things that have brought you income. I don't have that yet. What do I need to do? So the very first thing I would say is that, again, it goes back to that formula of like poetry and something. We are humans. We're multifaceted. We're interested in multiple things. We're mostly humans.
Mostly humans. Most of the time.
And so for me, again, it was like poetry and pronunciation. For Matthias, he's tying in poetry and like photography, like almost like poetry and performance and photography, videography, right? And so whatever that is for you, one, I'll give another example is, for instance, I was working with a poet who was really interested in like mental health. So one of the things that he's been doing is he's found a lot of articles, for instance, talking about the connection between like mental health and writing, or writing exercises that can assist, with mental health issues and things like that. So he's learning more about them. So once you have whatever it is the interests are, like poetry and something, then we can think about what is the actual, who is actually serviced by that. So for instance, for me with poetry and pronunciation, I get to target people who are interested in American English and also interested a bit in literature. Matthias gets to, for instance, and feel free to adjust it, you get to target businesses who want to convey themselves in an artistic way, like almost like non-conventional kind of advertising and things like that.
Kind of. I think the businesses that I've dealt with so far are like, they've all been like really. They've done small business. I've done like a couple hairdressers, an ice cream shop.
So you're like small business.
Yeah.
So like,
I'm just saying they haven't. They just have never communicated like in a video format ever. You know what I mean? Like they maybe have like a little kind of pan of their business like from their cell phone, but they don't have anything more formal than that, right, with the camera set up and a mic and things like that. Okay. So I'm typically working, at least at this stage, with people that are at least either starting out or they just have a fairly small operation where they don't really have a large enough budget, or they conceptualize, in order to get this, I'm going to need $20,000 to get this. So like, no, like we can actually make it not only real, but also smaller and more feasible for exactly what you need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in the case, for instance, of, again, like poetry and mental health, people who are struggling or interested, maybe know of people who are struggling with mental health and are trying to find techniques to help. Okay, so once you have that in mind, and you can think about what is their specific pain point. So for instance, for me with the pronunciation stuff, it's like, okay, people are interested in American English and literature who want to sound more natural in their own speech. Or for instance, maybe when they need to deliver information from a written source. So for instance, you can think like CEOs who have to give a talk or a meeting. You can think about someone that needs to give a speech. You can think of someone that needs to give a lecture and they have notes and things like that. So taking a written source and making it sound more natural on delivery. That's an example of the person who would sign up for my workshop. Okay, so then once I have that in mind and their pain point, I can then think about the solution. So then the solution is I created, for example, a workshop that helps you practice taking a written source and delivering it in a way that doesn't sound like you're just reading from a text. It actually sounds like you're talking naturally, conversationally. Okay, and I was able to create that. In the case of like the person I was working with, again, on like poetry and mental health, one of the things that they could do is they could create a weekly meetup, online or virtually, where people get to practice doing writing exercises together. It could be like a subscription-based thing. It could be like a seminar, however you want it to be. you know. So
Yeah.
these are examples of the types of offers that you could then create to give to the world, because again, the offer needs to solve a problem. It needs to solve a pain point. It needs to give a solution to people.
Yeah. I think kind of similarly, like one of the things that I did that helped me a lot is, and this, I kind of did this after I started finding things that I could interact with. So I was like, let me try to like make something. I kind of made it like a Venn diagram of all of the things that I do. And then I was able to, in that Venn diagram, kind of have some like offshoots of like, I do poems, and some of those poems I talk about, like I use impressions, right? And then some of those poems I'm using impressions, like I'm doing voice, like so. What is poems? Like poems, I'm implementing, I'm deploying my voice, so my writing and all that other stuff. And I'm like, okay, so what aspects of each of those things that I do can interact somewhere else? And then kind of you can be imaginative with it. So like after you kind of made the diagram, kind of just be like, what would it look like if I integrated this into this next section? Like how could I do that? And try to imagine like some different ways that's possible. And then again, just deploy them, as reasonably as you see fit. But, just throw some different things at the wall. I even think about when I started doing like poetry videos, I was like, I really want to make short films. And I was always like, I really want to make short films for years. But then I was just like, but I also want to do poems. But I'm like, the community that I'm in, for poetry, a lot of these people don't have, like, either maybe they don't have poetry videos, or all their poetry videos is like just their friend in the crowd doing like this with their phone, which is, hey, fine. But I'm like, I think that this community I can service and create some kind of creative visuals for like kind of what they want to do. And then like for Ajane's like initial one, like essentially for that, it was like we had like a little bit of a budget to be able to kind of build some things out. But from there, I'm like, okay, this is a service that I can offer, because you see like kind of like the work product, and then after you've seen the work product, then we're able to kind of do some other things with it. So yeah, it's just being, again, now that you kind of have all the aspects, like what communities are you in, or like what communities can you genuinely serve without it being like, oh, I have to try to cross a pavilion in order to get there. Like, no, I'm already here, and these people could probably use this.
I think one of the last things I do want to touch on is then, once you have that person in mind that you're focusing on and you're creating something for them, reaching them. One advantage I have with the workshops, I can, in general, if I create like another like text analysis workshop, and I'm say, hey, all right, let's do maybe like 5 seats, because like 5 seats, that gives me enough time to give individual attention to everyone. Once we get beyond that, it becomes a little bit trickier. I have a pronunciation platform already. I have 2 pronunciation channels on YouTube that have combined about maybe 29,000 followers. I have a Facebook for them that for teaching that has about 9,000 followers. So like I have a newsletter. It's like I'm already reaching a decent number of people, and I already have like a group coaching program that I pull a lot of people from when I do workshops and things like that. So I already am reaching a decent number of people that I can, if I create a workshop, I could be like, I'm fairly confident I can find 5 people to fill seats on,
Yeah.
You may not be there, right? Even from the Versus platform, way smaller. The Versus platform, we got like almost 500 subs. The Facebook is like 200 something. The Instagram is like 400 something. So like the numbers are just vastly different. And so if that's your situation, you're like, I have this offer, no one knows about it. And I mean, that's probably the biggest problem with poets in general, is that no one knows about you. You're not findable.
No one knows about you.
No one knows about you. And that's the problem with most artists, right? We focus so much on the art, we don't focus on the discovery.
Yeah.
And so if that is the case, well then this is where becoming findable is really, really important. So to give the example, the poet I was working with on mental health, that's kind of his thing is no one knows him.
Yeah.
He's in his field, like no one even knows that. Let me rephrase. Like if I were to say your name to someone, would they know you're a poet, or would they know that you have this ambition at all? If the answer is no, then that's a problem. Because ideally, we want to, if we say someone's name, we want them to be like, oh, that's that guy that does poetry, or like this is what
Yeah.
you know, like what are the associations people have when they say our name?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think just to tag onto that, I think a lot of times we are under the impression that something that we're trying to do just isn't working, or we're not like, it's just not getting the kind of effect that we really wanted to get, either with our poems or with our like photography or like videography or anything like that. But a lot of it is just like, are you working as diligently as possible to be as large of a communicator of what you're doing to as many people? Because it's like, maybe if you communicated what you're doing to 5 people, maybe that doesn't work. But if you work on communicating what you're doing to 500 people, how many of those people can you kind of pull out of that? And then naturally just scale it from there.
It's like we have to be realistic about numbers, right? If I'm trying to fill a room of 100 seats, that means that I actually probably need to reach about 10,000 to 50,000 people that need to know about the event, because most people aren't buying. Most people aren't going to get a ticket. Most people aren't going to get a seat, even for like a free thing. Okay, so with that in mind, you also see with YouTube, like people will post a video like, oh, my video doesn't do well, only gets like 5 views. Well, your impressions for that video were about 1,000, maybe. So I mean, that's not a great click through rate. But the other reality too is that, if I show a video to 1,000 people versus if I showed that video to 100,000 people, like the issues, we're just not reaching enough. Like it's not like from an objective standpoint, I'm not saying good or bad, just purely from a numbers perspective. If you're creating an offer and like only like 100 people find out about it, the information you're getting back almost isn't valid because the sample size is too small. We need a sample size, like tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to start really getting an idea of like, is my offer the problem or am I just not reaching people? And I think you really don't have an idea of that until you start reaching in orders of magnitude more people. Because like a YouTube video that gets 1,000 impressions, that's not enough impressions to gauge the quality of the video. It's not.
Yeah.
You really can't get a better idea until you're at like that 10,000, and even better would be 100,000 impressions. Then you can start getting an idea. Okay, this is what realistically I can expect for this video.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's also obviously going to be true for whatever we create. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, so I was working again with the poet on mental health stuff. So how do we start to build? And I think that's the other thing we want to consider is that we're not talking about something that's going to change your life tomorrow. We're talking about something that's going to build 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is a slow process. So if you're not patient like that, or you need income tomorrow or yesterday, this isn't going to help you. Yeah. Just being honest. But if you do have that timeline and you're willing to work, then now is the time to start kind of like that audience building and that readership and that starting getting people to associate us with the thing and to respect our opinion and to turn to us for help. So in the case of the poet who, again, with mental health, is maybe thinking about creating like a group, suggestion I had for him that he's been working on is like, hey, I need you to find lots and lots and lots of research articles talking about mental health in writing. And once you have that, I need you to start posting and writing about that. Let people know about it. You're not even necessarily having to come up with new information yourself. You're just the person that kind of lets other people know. Because like, hey, maybe you didn't hear about this, but this study makes this connection. We're trying to build those associations so that people start turning to us and start getting our name in the thing that we want to create. And obviously this takes a long time. But then once we do that long enough and then we create something, people are going to be like, you know what, you've already given me so much and I really value what you're doing. I want to take this a step further. And then they're going to be much more open. Versus if you just create something right now and you turn to like, hey, buy this. You don't have the trust, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the reputation. Why should they trust you?
Yeah. One of the things that I think we leverage the or we talk about the language around like brand a lot, and I don't think it's necessarily good in a lot of aspects, but in a lot of aspects it is, right? So because in a lot of aspects it's like if okay, let's just think about this: a pastor of a church, right? A pastor of a church is probably like if somebody is known for being a pastor of a church, and they're like, this guy is.
Sorry.
All right. All right. But yeah, if somebody is like the pastor of a church and they're like, they have like a pretty good name in the community. If you have like a question about something in the Bible, it's like, man, do I go to my mechanic or do I go to like a pastor? It's like you're gonna know which one. But then if you have an issue with your car, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna go to my mechanic. Or I feel like I've used like a mechanic like in 3 different analogies today. Something wrong with my car? I don't think so. I don't hope not. Knock on wood. But yeah, it's just to say that like, but once you've built that brand, once you've built that like that external knowledge around like who you are, like people know you for being that, then you creating a service around that it connects dots for them. You know what I mean? Like you would create that because of course you would, because this is the thing that you do. Like, and that should be what it feels like for them to hear that you're offering it. You know what I mean? So like, if they see you should almost be as identifiable by the services that you provide, than the work that you put out. Because if somebody was like, they hear this service, like, man, that's something that Versus would do. Like it should make sense.
Which also speaks to the need to be remarkable, because if I am just telling you what I do, that's not going to be very evocative, okay? Yeah. But if you tell me what I do, that's kind of like the next tier up. But the tier we really want to reach is the tier where people are telling other people about what you do.
Yeah.
Even when you're not in the room, especially when you're not in the room. That's when the associations that we're trying to build are at the level that we need to really start, building. I didn't start these like pronunciation in text workshops that I create. I really only started doing, in 2024. My teaching business started in 2019. This is 5 years of build up. If I had started doing this in 2019, I wouldn't be able to fill rooms with it. I would have empty seats on my workshops. Now I'm able to consistently fill for the numbers I'm looking for, which I think also, I guess a final thing I'd like to say is that you also kind of control the metrics of your success, because I'll talk about the poetry space. So we have a series called the Micro Mic, and we're located on the west side of Columbus. This is a part of town that's far from people. I get it. We're doing events on weeknights. It's been cold. A lot of people on the west side don't know about us. Most of my poetry connections live on the north side, east side, downtown area. And this is a part of town that most people just aren't familiar with. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of hurdles that come to play when I create an event here that I'm very much aware of. So one of the things that I focus on is, honestly, I don't really care how many people come to the events. I really don't. I obviously don't. It's a small room. Like, I could fit 10 people here, in this crowd. So
somebody's in the audience like, I don't care about
So I changed the metrics. So it's like, I'm not going to care about attendance. I'm going to care about what can I give, for instance, if I'm doing an arena, what can I do to give the most to the poets that I have performing here? And the best thing I can do, especially from a producer standpoint, is I can give them a quality, for instance, recording and audio, what they're doing, in a way that looks professional, that they, honestly, most poets have never had before.
Absolutely not.
Multiple camera angles with super edited video and edited audio with graphics and things like that. Most poets don't got that. Okay. And they're able to put that on.
And they're not even
socials.
Thinking about the fact
and they're
that
not
they
even
don't got that.
You
know what I mean?
Like, that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other issue. But which Actually, I guess I should tap into that. So a lot of people aren't even, a lot of poets don't even think about that. What's up to Aaron checking in? Great to see you, miss.
What's up?
I'm big on video. I think video is a huge platform because it gives you everything else. A lot of poets don't necessarily care about it. So by doing these sorts of events, I'm not telling poets to start caring about it, but I'm starting to show them like, hey, this could be you, without actually saying that.
Yeah.
So again, we're not thinking today, we're not thinking tomorrow, we're thinking pipeline, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, after you've seen like, oh, all these poets got these videos up that look better than Button Poetry. See, I said it.
Yeah, buddy. Come see us.
Come at me.
You know? See the door fly open.
Right? Like, that'd be cool, like, if I had a video like that.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, because it's almost like Inception where you can't just, like, hold their hand and be like, think this, think this, think this. You got to make them arrive at the thought on their own. Mm-hmm. So it's just, like, gentle nudging. Every event I do here is going to be recorded. Everything's going to be recorded. We're going to put it on the channel. We're going to turn it into a podcast. We're going to make clips from it. You're going to start seeing this stuff all over the place. If you know the poet, I'm going to do lots of poets in the city. So most likely you're going to see something of mine eventually. If you haven't yet, just wait.
Well, that's one of the things that so somebody, when you did do the headshots, right? That's some, like, a lot of different sectors of people need headshots, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, like, more than other than poets, but poets are probably the last ones to even, like, they think, okay, I need a headshot. Let me grab my phone, do that. That right here, that's I don't want to talk about it, but that'll drive you crazy. And so I think when you provide that headshot, that, like, really, like, professional looking headshot, it does a couple things. It immediately starts to restructure that artist's mind as far as, like, what is needed now in my toolkit as an artist. Like, it's not just paper, pencil, or pen or laptop or whatever like that, and let me find out about a show and let me go to that show or not. It's not just that. It's also fresh headshots. Like, if I'm going to be presenting myself, now it leads them on to that whole other train. Like, now that I have fresh headshots, it's like exactly what you said when we talk about, like, poetry videos. Like, one of the reasons why I'm like that was such a big proponent of the poetry videos is that, like, it's a presentation of your work that you don't have to be working for right now. If somebody wants you live at a show, nobody's going to be like, well, as opposed to getting them live, I'm just going to put their YouTube video on and like, so you don't got to worry about you not being needed in that space anymore. But outside of that, it's like you have to be known in all these spaces. Mm-hmm. And a really quick way for you to be known is for you to have a presentation of your work that you can put online. That if somebody booked me because, like, Kobe's birthday was coming up, and when as Kobe, no, it wasn't Kobe's birthday. It was actually August 24th is like Kobe Day, and so, like, Kobe Day was coming up, and they were just searching online and they found my poem, and they were like, and like it was in Dayton, and they were just like, oh, like, you're local. I'm like, yeah, I'm close. And then so, like, I got booked straight off the train to that. But I'm like, wouldn't happen if, again, I would have happily done it, but like, they probably wouldn't have had that information about me unless they're searching and they're like, oh, look at this. This is really cool. Yeah. So it's just to say that, like having that poetry video out there in the world is really useful. But again, a lot of poets, especially poets that either are starting or poets that just haven't been in a community that, like, or maybe they just haven't, like, kind of pushed themselves to kind of be in some of these other rooms and other these spaces that would encourage them to do that. They're not even thinking about, like, man, let me get a poetry video done. Like, let me, like, get a really high quality, again, high quality, one thing, multiple angles, forget about it. Forget about it. So it's just like, yeah, having that is an incredible asset that people just aren't thinking about.
But if you're creating something that's really new, that's disruptive, there's going to be slower uptake. So that's why you have to warm things up. Like, I remember I was reading this, it was talking about the origin of, like, grocery carts in grocery stores. originally people didn't want to use them. They just wanted to use like the
Basket.
yeah, just the baskets. So what did they do? They basically grocery stores like paid people to like walk around the grocery store pushing the carts, and they're like, oh, this is actually really helpful. So then other people start using the cart because people start seeing it. It's the same idea with like when the car first came out, you know, the famous Henry Ford quote, you know, if he asked people what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse. They didn't want a car.
Still want a faster horse. If I can get a horse, if I can get a horse that gets me up to 120 miles per hour.
It took you a while to get here today. So like, and that's actually like they used to like throw stuff like when the cars like when the Model T first came out. So people like it would go down streets. People like throw stuff. They throw like rocks and like eggs and stuff. It's like my god, you know.
I'm not throwing eggs nowadays.
So it's like if you're creating an offer that's really disruptive and new that people aren't used to, well then the question also becomes how are you priming people. So for instance, in the case of like video and poets, you know, by filming more and more poets that people know in the city, it starts to get people more acquainted with the idea of video and having something accessible in YouTube channels, things like that. So this is kind of the thing you want to be thinking about with your offer as well, which again takes time. This isn't something that is going to change your life tomorrow. But we're not worried about tomorrow. We're worried about, you know, next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from our topic for today, Matthias?
No, I mean, I think we covered it.
So, if you guys are creating things, you're right. If you guys are creating an offer around poetry, sorry, a ring fell on the floor. That'll be fine. Let us know. We'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you have suggestions, if there's things that you have encountered, if you have your own story, or if you are trying to create your own thing but are kind of lost, feel free to share with us in the comments, chat, things like that. We'd love to kind of hear what you guys are doing.
Oh, yeah.
Once more, my name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
This is Arts and Offers. We'll be back next Tuesday with more talk about poetry, art, and business. Hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon. Take care, guys. Bye.